5 families took him home. 5 families brought him back. The last one left him tied to a shelter gate at 6:47 in the morning and drove away without looking back. Nobody at the rescue thought anyone would ever take him. Then, a 4-year-old girl sat down on a cold concrete floor in front of his kennel, and everything changed. 5 families. That was the number. 5 families who took him home, gave him a name, bought him a bed, and then brought him back. The last one didn't even stay long enough to fill out the return paperwork. They just left him tied to the shelter gate at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday and drove away without looking back. The staff found him sitting perfectly still in the cold, not pulling, not barking, just waiting, like he already knew. His name was Bear, 130 pounds of Rottweiler with a scar above his left eye and a file that read, "Returned 5 times, not recommended for families with children." Nobody at Riverside Rescue expected anyone to take him. He had been there 11 months. 11 months of watching families walk past his kennel, slow down, and keep walking. 11 months of other dogs getting chosen while Bear sat in the back of his run, quiet as furniture. The staff loved him. That was the hard part. They knew what he was. They knew the file was wrong. But knowing something and being able to prove it are different things, and Bear had run out of chances to prove anything. Then Diane Caldwell walked in on a Saturday afternoon with her 4-year-old daughter, Nora. Diane was not looking for a large dog. She was not looking for a Rottweiler. She was not, if she was being honest, looking for anything that would complicate her already complicated life. She was a nurse working 4-day stretches, a single mother, and a woman who had told herself 3 times that week that she was fine. She had come to the shelter because Nora had asked to see the dogs, and saying no to Nora was something Diane was still learning how to do. The shelter volunteer walked them down the kennel row. Nora stopped at every gate. She was 4 years old, and she greeted every dog with the same open-armed enthusiasm. No fear, no filter, no understanding of why some of these animals flinched when she raised her hand. She stopped in front of Bear's kennel and crouched down. Bear was in the back corner. He didn't come forward. He didn't bark. He watched Nora the way he watched everything, completely still, assessing. "He's sad," Nora said. "He's been here a long time," the volunteer said carefully. Nora sat down cross-legged on the concrete floor in front of his kennel gate and waited, just waited, the way children do when they have decided something and don't feel the need to explain it. Bear looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood up, walked slowly to the front of the kennel, and sat down on his side of the gate, 1 foot from Nora's knee. The volunteer said nothing. Diane said nothing. Nora reached 2 fingers through the bars, and Bear leaned his enormous head against them. Nobody moved for almost 4 minutes. Diane signed the paperwork an hour later. The volunteer pulled her aside before they left. "His file says not recommended for children," she said. "I saw what I saw," Diane said. The first 2 weeks were not easy. Bear didn't know how to be in a home. He startled at the refrigerator. He wouldn't eat unless Nora sat on the floor beside his bowl. He paced at night, slow circuits through the apartment, checking rooms, checking doors, checking Nora's room last and always longest. Diane watched him on the baby monitor she had never stopped using. Night after night, the same thing. Bear would push Nora's door open with his nose, stand in the doorway for a full minute, and then lie down across the threshold, blocking it, facing out. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, that genuinely stings. Hit the button. You need to see what happens next. By week 3, something shifted. Bear started eating without Nora beside him. He stopped startling at the refrigerator. He found his spot, a place beside the couch where he could see the front door, the hallway, and the corner of Nora's room all at once, and he stayed there, calm, present. Nora started doing her puzzles on the floor next to him every afternoon. She would narrate each piece out loud, explaining her decisions to Bear with the seriousness of a professor, and Bear would watch her hands with what Diane could only describe as focused interest. "He understands me," Nora told Diane one evening. "I think he does," Diane said. Rottweilers were bred for centuries as herding and protection dogs. They assess, they decide. They do not extend trust carelessly, and once extended, that trust becomes something structural, built into the way they move through space, the way they position their bodies, the way they sleep. Bear had not trusted anyone in 11 months. Then a 4-year-old sat on a cold concrete floor and waited, and something ancient in him recognized the gesture. Stories like this don't get told enough. This is exactly why we're here. The night of February 9th, Diane came home from a 12-hour shift at 11:40 p.m. Bear met her at the door, which was normal. What was not normal was that he didn't step back when she entered. He stayed close, pressing against her side, walking with her into the kitchen instead of returning to his spot. Diane checked the apartment. Everything looked fine. She checked Nora, sleeping, undisturbed. She told herself she was tired. She made tea and sat on the couch, and Bear put his head in her lap and kept it there, something he had never done before. At 2:31 a.m., she woke to Bear standing at the bedroom door, still, alert, making no sound at all. She followed him to the living room. He went directly to the window and stood with his body squared to the glass, staring at the street below. There was a man in the parking lot. He had a phone and he was photographing the ground floor windows, methodically, unit by unit. Diane called 911. The police arrived and spoke to the man. He had a history. 2 addresses in the building had been targeted the previous month. The officer told Diane she was lucky. Diane looked at Bear sitting beside her in the hallway, pressed against her leg, watching the officer with calm, dark eyes. She thought about the file. Not recommended for families with children. 5 returns. 11 months alone. She thought about a 4-year-old sitting on a cold concrete floor with her fingers through a kennel gate. And she thought about how the thing that looks broken from the outside is sometimes just waiting for someone patient enough to sit down and stay. Bear is 3 years old now. He still does his nightly rounds. He still lies across Nora's doorway. He still finds his spot beside the couch every morning and watches the front door with steady, unhurried attention. Nora still explains her puzzles to him every afternoon. He still watches her hands like every piece matters. 5 families gave up on him. 1 4-year-old sat down on a cold concrete floor and refused to. If you are thinking about adopting a dog with a difficult history, take your time. Go slowly. Pay attention to what happens when a child sits down in front of them, because sometimes that moment tells you everything a file never could. Did Bear deserve those 5 chances, or did it only take 1? Tell me in the comments.